All right, today we're going to start talking about section 1.2, which is looking at different segment lengths and congruent segments. So before we get started, make sure you guys have your notes in front of you, however you are taking down your notes. And then we can talk about how to look at different types of congruent segments. First of all, when we're looking at betweenness of points, in order for us to say that a point is between another point, they have to be along the same line or segment. So if we look at this particular one, we can clearly say that C is between because it's along the exact same segment. So when we look along this segment, C is clearly marked in between A and B. So C is between A and B. But when we look at the other diagram, there is no line or segment that could connect D, E, and F. Therefore, we would have to say that E is not between. So in order for them to be between, they must all be collinear points. Next thing, when we are talking about congruent segments, segments are said to be congruent. We need to use the congruence symbol. So that would tell you that you are congruent. And that means that these segments are equal to each other and they are the same length. So we would say that DE, segment DE, is congruent to segment GF if the segments are equal in length. And we often use tick marks when we are indicating congruency of things. So if I wanted to name two segments are congruent to each other, I would give them the same tick mark. So for example, those two segments I could say are congruent to each other by giving them each the same tick mark, and then that would tell me that segment HI is congruent to segment KL. If I wanted to mark another pair of segments congruent, can't use a one tick mark, I've already done it. So if I use a double tick mark here, then I could say that those two segments, IJ, is congruent to segment LM. And then if I wanted to name a third pair of segments congruent, like this one right here, I could use 3 tick marks, or I'll use a little circle here, which would tell me that segment HJ is congruent to segment KM. So now looking at the different things that we have just talked about, why don't you pause the video for a minute here and answer these 3 questions, and then we'll check our answers. So when we're looking at naming the points between M and C, so I first need to look at the line or segment that connects M to C. So when I connect M to C, I see that there are clearly 2 points that are in between M and C, so H and N. When I want to name 2 pairs of congruent segments, I'm looking for segments that have the same tick marks as each other. So one of the pairs, I see 1 tick mark and 1 tick mark, which tells me that segment MA is congruent to segment HT. And then when I'm looking for another pair of congruent segments, I see a triple tick mark and a triple tick mark, which tells me that segment MP is congruent to segment PT. There are no other segments in here that have the same tick marks. I have a double tick mark here, but no other one. We do have tick marks in here within angles, and we'll talk about the angles later on. Next one, looking at M to G. So when I connect M all the way to G, there is no point that is on the same line as M and G. So the points that are between M and G would be none. Now looking at number 1, the big thing that we always want to make sure we do is label our diagram. So this tells me that OM is equal to x plus 8. So I want to label OM as x plus 8. It then tells me that MP is 2x minus 6. So make sure you label MP as 2x minus 6. It then tells me that the entire thing is 44, so I will show that the whole thing equals 44. So this tells me that since the whole thing is 44, when I add these two things together, I need to equal 44. So x plus 8 and 2x minus 6 must equal 44. And we can go ahead and solve our equation the way we always have. And we're going to get x value of 14. So the algebra portion is something that you guys have done many times in the past in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. The geometry portion is where we have to go a step further and then look at answering another question. So in part B, it says find the measure of OM. Well, in our diagram, we said that OM was x plus 8. Well, we now know what x is. So since OM equals x plus 8, plug in our 14, and we find out that OM equals 22. And then to answer the last portion, it says, are they congruent to each other? Well, using my x is 14, when I plug in here, I get 22. When I plug in 14 right here, I also get 22. And so 22 is the same for both of them. So are OM and MP congruent to each other? Yes. The cities shown on the map lie approximately in a straight line. Find the distance from Sacramento, California to San Bernardino, California. Because Fresno is, it says, in approximately a straight line, that is telling us that Fresno is between them. Because it is between, in order to find the distance from San Bernardino to Sacramento, you get to take the 158 and add it to the 230. And that's only because it is between, and we get a distance of 388 miles. And that is all for this notes, and then we will talk about the next section later.